Welcome to Around the Shop with 360 Woodworking. Your hosts are Chuck Bender and Glen Huey. Each Saturday, tune in for the best in woodworking tips, techniques, and general shop fun. Now, here's the 360 guys, Chuck and Glen.
So today's topic comes to us from a member of 360 Woodworking. His name's Bob, and we met him at the Woodworking shows, and he sat in on a number of our shows. And the one area that he thinks he really needs some more help in, and surprisingly enough, a lot of our readers feel the same way, is with finishing. So today we thought we'd just pick out a basic topic.
Right. If we start with just our basic idea of what a good overall finish is, something that the beginner can use, something that somebody with a lot of experience can use, it would be shellac.
Yeah. And I think this is a great thing. I mean, you know, a lot of the guys out there that we talk to start with an oil finish because it's dead simple and stuff, but there's so many things you can't do with it. Shellac, You can do a lot more.
Well, and it's quicker to use, it's easy to apply, and it's really tough stuff. And that's the key.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about shellac. Let's talk about the kinds of shellac, because I know a lot of guys are stuck out there with the idea that they have to make this out of flakes.
Right.
And there's also the premix that you can buy at the store. Okay, so which do you prefer and how do you go about it?
Well, I started out using the premixed stuff, which is what you buy when you are headed out to the big box store and you see the cans. And
it's Zinsser. We can name it. That's what it is.
We don't have any sponsors. No. We can do whatever we want.
Oh.
And then I moved to using shellac flakes. And when you really start to understand what shellac is, it is the excretions of the lac bug, which is a beetle.
Right.
And it's stretched out and spread out and dried, and then they break it up into these little flakes. And even the premix stuff from Zinsser is made from shellac flakes.
Right,
you can't make shellac
yeah,
any other way.
Right. You're not going to buy, plastic and put it in there and make shellac. It all comes from a natural product.
Right.
Right. So there's no difference that way.
And the fact that it comes from different regions, and depending on how they process it, means you get different colors.
Yeah, I mean, my thought on it, what I've always understood was the more times it's refined, you get a lighter color, and you start to take more and more wax out of it because it is a waxy product from the beginning. So if you're using a seed lac or something that's way down on the bottom of the scale, you're getting a deep, deep color, and you're getting a lot of wax.
Sure.
Okay. As you move up, the color lightens, the wax disappears, so to speak.
Right.
And so that's with the shellac flakes. Now, when you buy the Zinsser product, you're looking at a couple different kinds. Right. Well, it comes in three flavors, but two that are labeled shellac, which I find very interesting. There is clear and amber, which are the two shellacs that are named, and those are coming in 3-pound cuts.
Okay, now I'm sure. I mean, I know what a 3-pound cut is, but I'm sure there are people watching this that really aren't quite sure what we're talking about.
Sure. So we should go through it. All right. So a 1-pound cut is 1 pound of shellac
flakes
dissolved in 1 gallon of denatured alcohol.
Right.
Pretty straightforward.
Exactly.
A 2-pound cut are 2 pounds of shellac flakes dissolved in a gallon of denatured alcohol.
Okay. Now, I know you're all woodworkers out there.
We caught a lot of people with this during the Woodworking Show presentation.
Can you guess what a 3-pound cut is?
Sure, it's easy. It's 1.5 pounds of shellac flakes dissolved in a half a gallon of denatured alcohol.
Now, wait, you're going to have them do math?
Well, it's a simple formula when you pick it up. And, the funny part is almost nobody that I know that mixes shellac mixes a gallon at a time.
Right.
So you've got to find ways to break it down, and they're very simple.
Sure.
So the difference from that is then you can mix up whatever pound cut you want when you're mixing flake. When you buy the Zinssers at the store, you're getting a 3-pound cut. All right, a clear and amber. But I said there's a third. There actually is. It's called seal coat. And seal coat is a shellac, but it is a 2-pound cut.
Right.
Now, I don't know why they're different. other than that's the way Zinsser's always made them.
See, now I've always felt using the clear stuff that it was thinner in viscosity than the amber shellac, and so to me I've always figured it was closer to a 2-pound cut, and the seal coat really feels like it's more like what you would get at about a 1.5-pound cut.
Well, yeah, you can take that issue up with Zinsser's, because what they do is they say that it's 2 3-pound cuts and one of them is a 2-pound cut.
I got it. I understand what they're saying, but having mixed my own shellac flakes for a long time and then thinned it out so that I could apply it using my favorite method, that you get the feel of it, and that clear stuff just really feels like it's a little thinner. Yeah. So,
okay.
But
so,
anyway, you asked where did I go, and I started by using the premixed stuff. Then I moved to shellac flakes. Yeah. And when my shop got big enough that we were just blowing through shellac, and it's kind of, you have to mix it up and then let it sit basically overnight.
Right.
And there's nothing worse than getting in the middle of a piece of furniture and you run out.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to mix up more, and chances are you're not going to get the exact same mix again, even if you weigh this stuff.
But, I mean, even if you do that, there's no... I mean, the transition from one mixture to another might be something that you realize, but you can't be off on this. I mean, if you aim for a 2-pound cut and you get a 2.067 pound cut, it's not going to make any difference.
No, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sometimes you have a little bit left over, you mix up some more, and color's a little different, or it goes on a little thicker. And if you're halfway through a high boy, say, and you've got 5 out of the 11 drawers done, you might see a slight difference in the build between those, and now all of a sudden you've got something that's staring you in the face that
is a problem.
Is a difference.
Right.
So that's the great thing about using the Zinsser product, is it's consistent can to can every single time.
Right. Right. So how then do you use the shellacs? Are you a clear? Are you an amber? Are you a mix?
Oh, I use almost exclusively amber.
Right. And that's where you and I differ hugely, because I only use the amber.
Because I do it right.
Yeah, right. I only use the amber to color my stuff down a little bit and change the overall look of the piece of furniture, and specifically on cherry and walnut. I like those two woods to be warm instead of cool. So the amber for me kind of warms that up.
Yep.
And my method is I put on a couple coats of clear, get a good base, sand it down, and then I'll lay on a couple layers of the amber until I get the color that I want. And then I immediately switch back to clear, and I finish with clear.
And the clear really is almost totally clear.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a little color in it. I mean, anything you put on is going to color some.
Exactly. None of the top coat films are clear. Right. I don't care what they say.
Nah, it doesn't come.
But it's clear shellac's pretty close, considering.
Right.
I mean, it's still got a little bit of a yellow cast.
So we kind of know where you're coming from, where I'm coming from on this. Let's talk about methods of application.
I started by spraying, and then I moved to brushing, and then I moved back to spraying, and then I moved back to brushing. And now, I tend to brush more than anything at this point. So, but you can put it on. You can rag it on, you can brush it on,
right,
or you could spray it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've named 2 of the 3 ways that are highly accepted for applying shellac.
I never really got too much into the ragging it on because it dries so fast that I always found that, you're leaving rag marks, it's grabbing and pulling and stuff like that.
And you have to keep a wet edge. And so where my experience with this is, I actually get better results when I rag it on than I do when I brush it on. So being unhappy with both, I immediately went to spray.
Right. Now, okay, and I get that. But like, what kind of brush were you using?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the whole key. And I've said forever, if you use a 25-cent brush, you're going to get a 25-cent job. So you need a good quality brush.
So you're using a 25-cent brush and a 50-cent rag, and that's why you're coming
I'm getting
better.
Twice as good with a rag, of course. No, it's fun. And this is a place, that I find that it works. It helps me working in a shop with someone, because I've watched you apply shellac with a brush, and you're doing it way different than the way I do it. Right. And I think that's where my problem came.
Well, and that, having taught a lot of people over the years how to brush shellac, that's the biggest stumbling block. Everybody wants to really just sort of try and keep working it forever, and they load the brush up. Really, you got to dip just the 1/8 of an inch of those bristles in there. And I'm using a badger hair brush.
Yeah.
I think it's the best. I'm sure other people will, have their own favorites, but it's a natural bristle. They're not overly expensive. I mean, you can buy them. I buy mine from Jamestown Distributors in Rhode Island, and compared to the regular woodworking sites, they're about half the cost.
Yeah, it's a good place to go.
So dip the tips in maybe 1/8 of an inch and do small sections and work fast.
Yeah.
And the key is to keep the brush upright and just really use the tips.
Right. And see, this is where, and this is, again, watching you, I'm sitting there going, wow, first of all, you're not loading the brush like everybody says you should keep a wet brush and make sure you keep a wet edge and all that. And what I've noticed
needs to be wet, not the brush.
Yeah, well,
that's the key.
Yeah, but what I've noticed when you're doing it is that it doesn't look like you're putting anything on, but you can obviously see it going down.
Sure, it changes.
Right,
it changes sheen instantly.
Yeah. And to me, that's where I think I made all my mistakes. Is I tried to keep that brush loaded, and then I'm in there putting on too thick of a coat with each layer, and that's where I'm getting brush marks and things like that.
Sure, because the very top of it's skinning over quickly, and now you're dragging the brush and all of that kind of stuff.
And the second thing that I noticed watching you is the upright brush. When I brush, I've got that thing laid over at a 45-degree angle because I'm laying out those lines.
Right.
Well, you've got it up almost 90 degrees, just a little off, and your brush tips are barely hitting. It reminds me of the guy on PBS that did the painting shows, so Bob Ross. Yeah, 3 hairs and some air, So, I mean, that's really much what you're doing. So watching you, it's like, I'm going to try things a little bit differently. Right. And see, this is one of the great things about why guys out there should be looking at videos and watching stuff go. Because even though it's not a topic, as you watch a process, you'll pick things up and wonder, okay,
you may not like the project or the technique, but if you can pick up 1 or 2 things from it, grab it and go, and then apply it to what you do. For me, that very vertical brush and just barely touching the surface came from actually ragging on shellac, but I did it in what they call French polishing. So you're using a cotton wad wrapped in a cotton cloth, like a cheesecloth or something, but very fine, and then you're adding some kind of an abrasive, an oil, and then the shellac on there, and you're literally just working that shellac out and across. You're filling in the grain, getting a glass smooth surface. And if you think about it, you're putting on a film that is microns thick. And when I started thinking that way with the brush, all of a sudden my finishes got better. You don't notice the brush marks as much.
Right.
It's still tough to deal with on a dining room tabletop for brushing. I mean, spraying shellac is a really easy thing to do, and tabletops are a good example. Where I got back into it was doing lots of William & Mary stuff, high boys, gate leg tables. It's really hard to spray and get an even coat on turnings with lots of deep recesses.
Right.
So it's just so much quicker to do with it.
Unless you spray before you actually assemble the piece, then you can kind of hold it up and spin it and get a good spray on it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I can totally see why you go to brush at that point. But for me, because of the problems that I had, I went to spray, and that's my favorite. And I use a HVLP. So we get a lot of questions from people about the machine themselves, and do they need a 2-stage, a 3-stage, a 4-stage? And I look at that, and first of all, I don't know that you can even buy single stage and 2-stage anymore. The manufacturers have kind of gone past that. But look, each stage breaks down what you're doing more and more, meaning it atomizes it, and that's the whole process.
Right.
But what happens with that is the materials that we're working with finishing furniture, stains, shellacs, lacquers
and things like that.
Yeah, even those things. You don't need, they're so thin that you don't really have to worry about breaking them down tremendously.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, if you were spraying automotive paint, the finer you can get those droplets, how you atomize it, the smoother that finish is going to be.
Right.
Not necessarily the case with shellac.
Yeah, now,
it's pretty thin.
We've got a really nice sprayer here in the shop, and we've also got the intro-level models that we have here in the shop. And I've used both for the entire process, and I see very little difference. I
Right.
might be
In
able
the
to
end
move
result.
a little faster or something like that, but as far as the workings of the machine, it doesn't take a $1,000 tool to do that. If you have $1,000 you want to put toward finishing, by all means do so, but it doesn't take that type of tool to make it happen for you.
Right.
So we've talked about mixing your own or buying it pre-mixed.
Right.
We've talked about pound cuts.
And we both lean towards the premixed,
Yep.
even though there's that urban myth out there about
about the wax.
and de-wax.
Please.
We'll cover that at some point in the future.
Look, and the thing on this shellac from Zinsser is you have to get fresh shellac. And that's a key thing. According to Zinsser, their shellac's good for 3 years from the date of manufacture. And it used to be they had the date on it to tell you what the date of manufacture was. Well, they changed that now. They got a formula on there. But if you go to our website, 360woodworking.com, search the blogs for shellac, there's a whole blog post up there that describes exactly what each number means on the top of those cans.
Excellent.
And you have to check that out because old shellac will get to the point where it doesn't dry.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't dry, could I tell you stories about that? Because I've had some. So the bottom line on this.
Well, good. Wait a minute. I'm going to search real quick on the website because I got to figure out if my can's any good or not.
No, they're pretty simple. There's you won't have any trouble with that once you read the blog post. So we've talked about mixed, and we've talked about the application and how we've done that. So there's much more to talk about with shellac,
and finishing in general.
Oh yeah. So at this point, my thing to say, if you've gotten anything out of this podcast, what you should grab out of it is, if you're applying it with a brush, don't overload your brush. Make sure that your brush is what I would consider to be on the dry side, even though it's not.
Yep.
And it's going to make your job a lot nicer. Keep your brush straight up, and if you've got the money to invest, grab a sprayer and spray some, because both of those are great applications. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it. We'll see you next week.
Join the 360 guys next week and every Saturday for more woodworking talk from around the shop.